Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce RTX 4060 in Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 with DLSS 3.5. This one is the MSI Ventus version of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers as usual, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups. GPU resizable bar is also enabled, and this is an 8GB GPU. And over on the left, we're pairing it with a Ryzen 7 5800X 3D and 32GB of DDR4 3600MHz CL14 RAM. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright guys, let's go over the settings. First, I'm starting at 1080p resolution using the Ray Tracing Overdrive preset, but I'm gonna disable the DLSS Super Resolution first over here, as well as these three settings which I don't really like. They just blur the image or make it noisier, so and as you probably know by now, the Ray Tracing Overdrive means that path tracing is enabled, and it's just a technology preview because it's super ultra intensive. And to no one's surprise, I believe at this point, Ray Tracing Overdrive at native resolution, even at 1080p, is super intensive, and it doesn't really run all that well, does it? It's also a bit noisy, the reflections are a bit blocky, although they're realistic, I guess, and it actually looks great, especially on a native 1080p monitor. But yeah, this is definitely not how one should play this game. Let's enable DLSS, which is supposed to be enabled in the first place with this technology. And let's also disable ray reconstruction, because first we need to take a look at the reflections and so on with DLSS only. And as you can see, we're getting like 35 frames per second. Reflections look a lot lower quality at the moment, pretty soft and blurry actually on top of the car. At 1080p, you definitely need that ray reconstruction setting enabled, and good thing is it will make the reflections a lot better, as well as give you around the same FPS. So let's start counting our FPS right now and get out of there, because the police were after us, and now it looks kind of like an oil painting pretty much everywhere. That's DLSS 3.5 at work with ray reconstruction, of course. It gets a few more FPS maybe, sometimes it gets like a couple of more frames than DLSS quality, and that's a lot of ghosting actually sometimes. So at 1080p, it's not really amazing, is it guys? It's the same thing as we've seen with the RTX 2060 at 1080p with Ray Tracing Overdrive. I mean, the reflections themselves are much higher quality, but now the entire image looks like an oil painting. So this technology is kind of reserved for higher resolution, as at 1440p it looks way better than at 1080p with quality DLSS. But anyways, it still drops into the 20s at times, guys. It is not a great experience here, even with all of these settings enabled and Ray Tracing Overdrive, and you actually need Ray Tracing Overdrive for ray reconstruction to work. Now, this being a 40 series card means that we can actually enable frame generation, and it possibly will save it a little bit, okay? Here we have it. It's closer to 60 frames per second now, but the input lag is about the same as it was before, you know, 30 to 40 frames per second input lag, which is... it's okay, you know, it's certainly a playable experience, especially with the controller and stuff, but yes, sometimes, especially looking that direction, for example, it feels very input laggy, you know. Still, it looks less like an oil painting for some reason than it did at 1080p quality DLSS without frame generation. That's pretty weird. Goodbye, Bob! Alright, there we go. There we go. It doesn't feel too bad, though, with 60 FPS, even with frame generation, you know, shooting and stuff. We have the bug, yes, we have the invisible magazine bug still. That's so weird. The police don't care at all about us, my friends. Oh, yes. There's also a little bit of ghosting. Oh, hello there. Oh, man, come on. This is still Cyberpunk. A lot of people say, oh, it's the update 2.0, it's supposed to fix the game, it's completely bug-free at the moment, but no, definitely not, right? We're seeing a ton of bugs still. Alright, so we actually managed 60 FPS there at the end. with a couple of stutters here and there. I guess it's when VRAM maxes out, because it sometimes goes up to 8 gigabytes of VRAM usage there. And that's a shame, because the 3060 has 12 gigs, of course, and the 4060 has 8 gigs, and it clearly could use a little bit more than that, even at 1080p. But again, this is experimental settings, technology preview. Now, the Ray Tracing Ultra preset also enables DLSS by default, but first of all, let's try it with the native resolution. Disable this right here, and that's it for the Ray Tracing settings. Alright, here we have it, guys. This is Ray Tracing Ultra at 1080p native resolution. It's actually kind of playable, especially compared to everything that we've seen so far, right? With Overdrive. This is 30 plus FPS all of the time. Reflections look great. It's actually stuttering quite a bit at the moment. This doesn't usually happen in Cyberpunk 2077. It's usually a very smooth title, you know. But hey, I guess ray tracing is a bit too much for the little RTX 4060, even though it's 3rd generation RT cores and so on. Alright, it's time for the Ray Tracing Ultra preset with DLSS set to quality now, and I'm gonna disable these over here, of course, and we are now playing at 50-ish frames per second. Look at that. It is still not a perfect experience, obviously. I wish we could have 60 FPS on a 4060 at 2023 GPU. That's $300, you know. Like, it can't do Ray Tracing Ultra in Cyberpunk 2077 with the DLSS quality above 60 FPS all of the time. That's a bit underwhelming for sure. Still... Oh, boy, what the hell, dude? Jesus Christ, this physics, man. The physics are just completely broken still. But that's quite funny to see. I like it. Not gonna lie, I actually like it whenever it bugs out and stuff. Anyway, guys, oh, it's on fire right now. We got 56 FPS average, 57 now, with 36, 1% low. Can I have your car, buddy? Please? Thank you very much. You are a lifesaver. Let's stop it. Oh, that's a purple light right there on the back of the car. That's interesting. I've never seen that before on a police car. We got frame generation to save the day, fortunately. So this is what Nvidia is trying to sell you with the 40 series, of course. It changes the game, and you can get closer to 100 frames per second probably on average, or like 90 actually, not 100 FPS. It still looks pretty good. It's not as sharp, obviously. It's a little bit blurrier of an image. It has the added input lag, but since we were close to 60 FPS in the first place without frame generation, it doesn't feel laggy whatsoever, actually. I mean, if you compare numbers, this will definitely be a little bit more input laggy than 57 FPS average was natively, but it feels pretty good, guys. And it actually is really smooth at the same time. If it was a competitive shooter, for example, the input delay would bother me a lot, actually. But since it's a single-player title, it has some shooting mechanics, yes, but it still feels good. But yeah, those little stutters that sometimes happen like that could be because of the VRAM getting maxed out for a split second. I don't know, actually. I haven't seen those with, like, the 3060 Ti, for example. Oh! That's very interesting. Oh my god, what the hell are those physics? Yeah, let's stop it there though. Okay, 86 FPS average is what we get with 52 1% lows. It's a really smooth and playable experience like this, and if you want RT, this is the way to go with a 4060. Now, let's go down to Ultra settings. I'm going to disable FSR right here and these 3 settings. And now we don't have any ray tracing enabled. So this is pure rasterization once again. Okay, great stuff, my friends. It seems like with 1080p native resolution and without ray tracing, it's going to stay above 60 FPS for the most part. Still, if it does drop from 60, I will be a little bit disappointed, honestly, because once again, this is 2023 mid-range GPU, you know, and it is actually dropping from 60. God damn it, mate, come on. No, of course, it's not gonna be that noticeable. It only drops into the high 50s, and a little bit of an overclock on the card will push it over 60 100% of the time, but still... it's very underwhelming to see this. Obviously, we still have that frame generation stuff, DLSS, that we can enable to achieve way higher FPS, and in this title, it actually looks better with DLSS quality, 3.5 version, than native resolution, because it gets rid of the noise on the image, on the roads, for example, on top of the car, and so on. It just makes the visuals way cleaner, especially without ray tracing. Anyway, 65 FPS average and 49 1% load is... it's a little bit rough for this GPU. It makes it a hard sell if you want to play at native resolution. Okay, let's make it run above 60 FPS all of the time now, shall we? Quality DLSS is now turned on using the Ultra settings preset, and now these are true, you could say, 90 frames per second. It feels very smooth, super responsive as well. It also still looks very good at the same time. It has some reflections anyways, they're just not ray traced, so they're not accurate to the scene. But I mean, overall, it looks really good still, right? I would definitely play the game like this if I wasn't really caring about ray tracing whatsoever. I missed it. What the hell? What did he say? What did Bob say? Goodbye, sir. Who are you? Why are you... Oh my god, what the... That's another person killing Bob. Are you kidding me? Even the car is identical to mine. What? What was that? Hello, you're my best friend. Yeah, feel free to enter my car, you know, or just stand. I'm not gonna kill you, buddy. Oh, these police guys are also very nice. They also bumped into Bob's umbrella. Everybody's trying to destroy Bob's umbrella. See? This is a perfect experience here, guys. It can only mean that, right? Quality DLSS at 1080p ultra settings is the way to go. It is the way I would play this title if I was playing at 1080p resolution with this GPU, of course. Now, what if you want that super high refresh rate experience? Turn on that frame generation. I'll set DLSS to quality. The auto setting at 1080p is actually quality, but I prefer to manually do it, of course. And now you get the input lag from like 80 FPS or 90 FPS, but with the smoothness of 100+ frames per second. And this is where the 4060 is shining the most, in my opinion. Well, not the most literally, but goodbye, Bob, because ray tracing shines more with the lighting and reflection effects, of course. But here the 4060 is showing its strengths, you know. Frame generation is looking pretty good, actually. I was worried that at 1080p it would look bad, because when I first tried with the 4090 I was just playing at 4K resolution with frame generation. It looked pretty good, but it was noticeably softer. But here at 1080p, although it is noticeably softer than quality DLSS, you have that sharpness slider that you can adjust, and even at 40% sharpness right here, I feel like it looks pretty good. A lot of people say that they wouldn't use FG because of the artifacting and stuff. That's only if you slow down footage by a lot. If you don't slow down footage, if you're just playing the game in real time, especially with 130 FPS average almost, you're not gonna notice any artifacting. Let's try it out on high settings preset now, without frame generation and without DLSS and without FSR, which enables itself by default here. This is it, my friends, and at high settings, native 1080p resolution is where you can finally get 60+ all of the time, okay? If you want the native res experience, which again in my opinion looks a bit worse because it's noisier and more shimmery than DLSS quality, but hey, if you just hate upscalers completely, you cannot enable them. In that case, you probably don't have a 4060, honestly, because its only selling point is the DLSS 3 with frame generation. So yeah. But if you don't care about DLSS and you still have 4060 for some reason, well, this is the way to play at 60+ all of the time. It gets around 90 frames per second average, 1% lows in the 60s. It didn't really drop into the 60s. All right, next up, let's enable DLSS on quality, because, again, I told you, this looks a little bit cleaner and a little bit better than native resolution. And now we're getting around the same FPS as we saw at Ultra with frame generation enabled. It looks really pretty on high settings, this game, and with DLSS quality enabled, you can actually achieve a high refresh rate experience without any of the AI upscaling trickery. You know, only with DLSS 3.5 enabled here, which the 30 series and 20 series also support, which is great. They only lack frame generation features. I actually tested the 2060 yesterday. That was quite a fun video, testing like first gen ray tracing cores and stuff. It still performed pretty well, still looked pretty well, especially with DLSS on, and it provided a great experience here, even though it's a 6GB card. Now, let's enable frame generation while retaining the DLSS quality setting. I'm not using DLAA here today because that drops our FPS like crazy, by like 20 FPS, and it's just not worth the performance hit for the visuals it gets. I prefer to use DLSS quality, which already looks better than native resolution. Now, with frame generation, this is really great. You're gonna max out a 144Hz monitor all of the time, you know, at high settings with FG and DLSS quality enabled. And it still looks really good, as I told you guys. But yeah, this is the magic of the 40 series right here that we are witnessing at the moment. 158 frames per second on average and 135 1% lows on the 4060. That's crazy. With 110-ish watts of power as well at the same time. It's really, really efficient for the performance it gets. Alright, let's stop it there and bump it up to 1440p now. And here we have it, 2560 by 1440 res. Let's start with ray tracing overdrive settings. DLSS, I'm going to set it to quality right away. There's no point in testing native res here, because at 1080p it wasn't playable already. Ray reconstruction, I'll leave that enabled, because again, it gives you a couple of more FPS in some scenarios, and it makes the ray tracing effects way better looking. And frame generation, let's leave that off for now. I'm also going to tweak these settings right here, and that's it. So we're running path tracing now at 1440p. Oh boy, on the RTX 4060, and it is not great. Not sure if it's still applying, it could very well be, but yeah, not good at all. It's very good looking though for screenshots and stuff like that. You're gonna have a great time, but for actually playing the game, hell no. Now, what if we enable the DLSS frame generation with quality DLSS at the same time? Okay, the oil painting effect is, it's still there a little bit sometimes. I think frame generation enabled at around 40 frames per second or 30 to 40 most of the time, which is what we're getting here. It's terrible. It really feels awful. It's like you're playing on a very old TV, for example, on a PC. I don't know if you ever connected your PC to an old TV, but there is massive amounts of input lag. The oil painting effect was very noticeable there as well, by the way. Yeah, no. Anyway, DLSS is set to performance now with frame generation enabled. Maybe we can make it play decently well like this. No, the input lag is still insane. Alright, do not do this. Okay, ray tracing overdrive was passable at 1080p with frame generation enabled and quality DLSS, but here at 1440p, it just doesn't feel good whatsoever. Alright, let's drop it to the Ray Tracing Ultra preset without DLSS first. Disable these over here as well. And yeah, this is it. Okay, here we have it. VRAM is completely maxed out once again. Swapping things into the RAM already. That big stutter. Yeah, very noticeable. Well, yeah, this is it. 20-something FPS is what we get. Teens at times as well, and it's not even the most intensive areas, so it's a really terrible experience. If it had a little bit more VRAM, it wouldn't really stutter. That's what bothers me the most. It would still be low FPS, of course, but yeah, maybe with like quality DLSS it would have been playable. I'm gonna restart again just to make sure that it applies properly. There we have it. VRAM is still going up, 7.8 almost. Oh boy. Okay, it's going down now, but I think it's still gonna spill a little bit into the RAM. Once again, guys, we got some blocky reflections here at 1440p with Ultra RT settings, and the stuttering is happening again because of the lack of VRAM. God damn it, why? Anyway, again, the reflections are very blocky at the moment because we don't have ray reconstruction here with the RT Ultra preset, unfortunately. So there's that. The game is very stuttery once again because it already swapped things into the RAM. But yeah, with 1% lows of 20 frames per second and some noticeable stutters here, I will say at 1440p and 4K, just forget about ray tracing. I mean, you could use like performance DLSS here at 1440p and lower that internal resolution a bit more. It's not stuttering as much even with ray tracing enabled, but as you can see, oh, never mind. Over here it still stutters like crazy, guys. Not good, not a great experience. You know, this is just not worth doing. And of course, enabling that frame generation on quality, for example, will increase the VRAM usage even further, guys. Because frame generation does use more VRAM, and it's now getting around the same FPS as performance DLSS and 1440p. But again, those reflections still look very blocky and very blurry with the normal RT Ultra preset. It's a really big shame that you can't use the feature that's supposed to give you way more FPS at 1440p because the GPU lacks VRAM. Anyway, let's set it to performance now, see if the stutters are a little bit better. Okay, now that it's applied, I'm gonna start counting our FPS. It still has some little frame time spikes there, some stutters. It feels pretty bad with these stuttering issues and frame generation at the same time. Like, you got input lag now and you got stuttering on top of it, so nah. So forget about ray tracing here at 1440p. Let's enable the ultra quality settings and disable these over here. No ray tracing anymore. I'm going to restart the game to reset the RAM values and VRAM values. And here we have it. Start counting our FPS. VRAM is now totally under control, at least for now. It's still creeping up there, but it's not going to hit 8 gigabytes whatsoever, okay? That's really good to see. At least if you don't use ray tracing, 8 gigs are actually enough to have a good experience in Cyberpunk, at least. And yeah, it's still slowing down like crazy in some areas though. But I guess this difference is kind of expected, right, between 1080p and 1440p. First of all, the buzz width of this card is pretty low, 128-bit, so at higher resolutions it will struggle more than, say, a 256-bit card would. It will drop more FPS when increasing resolution, basically. And given that we saw lower than 60 FPS at times at 1080p, I guess this is a bit expected. Well, not really 30 plus all of the time. It's already dipped into the 20s. That's really underwhelming performance, actually. I thought it would be like 40 plus most of the time compared to the 50 plus most of the time at 1080p. Or at least like 35 plus, but no, we got 37 average here. Yeah, that's pretty low. Okay, at least we're not running out of VRAM anymore, so it won't stutter. And enabling quality DLSS will definitely make it a heck of a lot better. Start counting our FPS, and now it's getting 50 plus, I guess. Probably gonna get like 45 plus all of the time. Now the internal resolution is much lower, so the gains from DLSS, coupled with that 128-bit memory buzz, are huge at 1440p, as you can see. And once again, DLSS quality makes it look better than DLSS off in this game, now that we got the 3.5 version of DLSS. So it's a no-brainer to have it enabled, right? In Cyberpunk 2077, at least. Still, I would have loved to see more bandwidth on this card and a wider memory buzz. You know, that would go a long way to make it a little bit better performing. But hey, it is what it is. They decided to give us a 4050. Called 4060. Yes, still performs okay, you know. It's not as bad as 4060 Ti, which is $400 and it only has 8 gigs and it only has the same buzz width. That card is just, yeah, avoid this one. It is decent, let's say that. There are better value cards out there for sure, but it's not terrible, you know. At least it's a little bit faster than 3060, even though it has less VRAM, which is awful. Oh boy, oh boy. If only we could have an actual improvement generation over generation, that would be great. You know, 4060 Ti, for example, performs extremely close to the 3060 Ti in a lot of titles, and this one has less VRAM than 3060. Anyway, let's stop it there. Let's play with balanced DLSS at 1440p, and this should put us above 60 FPS most of the time now. Alright, instead of getting 50s on average, we're now averaging 70s, probably gonna end up being like 60-ish. If we manage 69 on average, that means that it will only drop slightly below 60 in super intensive scenarios that I'm not testing in this benchmark run, like the park area or whatever, which is the most intensive area inside of the entire game. But yeah, other than that, it will stay above 60 FPS for the entire time. And it seems like that's what we're getting here with balanced DLSS. That's pretty good, actually, especially after seeing the performance at 1440p native and ultra settings, which was pretty terrible in my opinion and underwhelming. At least DLSS is here to save the day, and it's surpassing my expectations a little bit. Balanced DLSS is actually very similar at 1440p to quality DLSS if you're not using ray tracing. So I would argue that this might be better looking than native resolution still. You also have DLSS frame generation, which coupled with quality DLSS, it looks really good still. Maybe a little bit more shimmery than balanced DLSS was. But hey, on a 27-inch monitor at 1440p resolution, it will look pretty good like this. And you gain a few more FPS, like 20 FPS or 30 FPS on top of what we got previously. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good car. I want that. I want that. I want that. Oh, no, no. Do not go away. Do not go away, boy. What the heck? Oh, come on. I want the thumbnail with that car. That's beautiful. I'm gonna get it, guys. I don't care. Also, the input delay is a little bit noticeable at around 80 frames per second, but manageable still, it's okay. Especially if you play like this for a long period of time, you're definitely gonna get used to it. Why did the guy stop there? Why are you stopped? Someone What? What are you doing? Did you run out of gas or something? Oh, thank you. You're a big guy, aren't you? I can talk to you.
I don't know you, so let's keep it that way.
Okay, I'm just gonna rob your car if you don't mind. Are you kidding me? He's just standing there. Oh boy, reminds me of Starfield. The NPCs from Starfield are also super dumb. Also, reflections here do look kind of meh. Of course, we don't have ray tracing enabled or ray reconstruction, but overall the image still looks amazing, and this is how I'd play the game, probably, at 1440p. Stop it there, 83 FPS average, 72 1% lows. It's pretty good, actually. Not gonna test balanced DLSS with frame generation on top of it because, well, it would look a bit worse, quite a lot worse, actually. Quality DLSS is where it should be at if you want frame generation with this card. And now we're at the high settings, preset, native resolution, and we're down into the 50s once again. This looks worse than what we've seen previously on Ultra with the DLSS settings enabled. But once again, there are a few people who will only play at native resolution, and well, at high settings at least it gets a way better experience than Ultra settings did. And it still looks amazing, of course, even without all of the RT stuff and the Ultra settings themselves, of course. High is a good balance, I would say, for visuals and performance, you know, especially with the 4060 here. It was dipping into the 20s on Ultra, and now on high it's getting 50-ish frames per second average. Still not 60 plus all of the time, so I wouldn't really pick these settings. But quality DLSS should fix that, guys. And now, wow, okay, now it looks better, it performs with more than 60 FPS the entire time, and I mean, it's still high settings, so it looks amazing. It's been a while since I've killed Bob, right? We gotta get to it, my friends. Let's go. Goodbye, Bob. There we go. Oh my foo. What? What did you want to say, Bob? Can I talk to you now? No? Of course not. Killers. I'm not more than one person, you know. You can't call me killers. It's killer. Okay, yeah, this is pretty good. It's never gonna drop from 60 FPS with these settings, guys. I think if you want high settings at 1440p, all you need to do is play with quality DLSS and it's gonna be an amazing experience. Really, really good one, as you can see. Even here, which usually dips a lot, it only dipped to 77 frames. Nothing to worry about here. Very, very smooth experience indeed. But what if you want more? DLSS frame generation is there for you. It still looks pretty good with quality DLSS. Once again, slightly, very, very slightly softer, but doesn't really matter too much at 27 inches with a 1440p monitor, you know. It will look pretty decent and sharp and detailed, but it doesn't really get you those super high FPS from 1080p, you know. We saw like 160 frames at 1080p using these settings, and here we're getting 100 frames per second. Without frame generation, it looked slightly better. It was still always above 60 frames per second with an average of 80 FPS, which still felt really smooth. But I mean, you do what you want, of course. If you prefer the higher FPS, the higher refresh rate experience for a smoother picture on a high refresh rate monitor, this might be very worth considering. I myself would just choose the high settings with the DLSS quality at 1440p. I think that's the adequate preset for the 4060 at this resolution. Alright, so since we've already found that, let's move on to 4K. Here we have it, 3840 by 2160, still with the high settings. Okay, native resolution at the moment. I am not gonna test higher than high here at 4K. It's just not worth it whatsoever. It's still applying, that's why it's getting 8 FPS. So let's wait a little bit until it fully applies. And here we have it. Now we're getting the true FPS from 4K resolution in this game. It's getting 25. If you're into that cinematic experience, if you're into movies and stuff like that, well, you're gonna be very happy with this, especially if you enable some motion blur, because it's actually 24 FPS on average at the moment. It also looks breathtaking here at 4K resolution. Still very noisy for some reason, you know, like even though film grain is disabled, the picture looks very noisy in Cyberpunk 2077. I was gonna say maybe it's like the little pavement on the streets and stuff that's actually noisy, but no, the reflections on top of the car are super noisy as well. We saw this one is very noticeable here. Yeah, perfect. Look at that. Look at all of that noise on top of the car. It's so weird, and once you enable DLSS on quality, it is a little bit better. It's still a bit noisy, but it's definitely better than what it was before, right? Let's start counting our FPS. Now the game is actually playable with 40-ish frames per second. That's pretty good. VRAM usage is also under control at 7 gigabytes, but it's going up, guys, okay? But still, I don't think it's spilling into the RAM. It hasn't spilled into the RAM. Actually, it hasn't spilled into the RAM ever since we disabled ray tracing at 1440p, so that's great to see. You know, it's actually enough, the 8 gigabytes, even for 4K high settings with quality DLSS. But even without quality DLSS, it wouldn't really be maxed out here in Cyberpunk. We got a new friend! Hello, it's Jesus, right? Maybe. Let's keep on going. Still no stuttering issues to speak of. It's pretty dang smooth overall. Although it's 40-something FPS, but hey, doesn't feel terrible and it looks amazing. But I don't know if anybody is actually running a 4K monitor with an RTX 4060, so it's probably not that relevant for most people, honestly. Let's drop it to balanced DLSS though. Still looking really good, although now you can see that it's running with DLSS. It's not like native resolution. It's a bit shimmery in some areas, but it still looks really good. You know, I wouldn't really have a problem playing like this, obviously. And it's getting 50-something FPS. We only got around like 7 FPS more than quality DLSS at this resolution. Now, do those 7 FPS actually make a difference in terms of smoothness? I guess they do. It's the difference between dropping into the low 40s and the mid 40s here. If you're playing at 4K, DLSS balanced is probably the way to go, if not performant. Oh my god, what happened there? Jesus. That physics, man. And people say that the physics are great in Cyberpunk sometimes in my videos. 51 FPS average and 42 1% lows. It's a stable and smooth-ish experience. Let's do performance DLSS now. Closer to 60. That's way better, okay? Way better. And it still looks really incredible, guys. This is now rendering the game at 1080p resolution and then upscaling it, of course, to 4K, and it looks nowhere near 1080p. Absolutely zero 1080p resemblance right now, guys. DLSS makes such a good job at 4K resolution with performance preset, and actually the auto preset for the 4K res on DLSS is performance. It looks great, and I'm on a 42-inch monitor once again. If you are on a 27-inch, 28-inch, 32-inch 4K monitor, it will look really good even with DLSS on performance. Heck, even DLSS performance at 1440p on a 27-inch monitor or 24-inch 1440p monitor will look pretty good. I've seen some comments in my videos saying that people are playing like that with like 38-inch and stuff to achieve high FPS, and they're enjoying the game with performance DLSS at 1440p. Now, let's enable the feature, my friends. Frame generation at 4K resolution with high settings and performance DLSS, which is the auto setting, by the way. So if you enable frame generation and don't touch DLSS, it will set it to auto, and it is gonna be at performance. This is very weird indeed. Why is it getting only like 5 to 7 more FPS than DLSS performance alone? What the heck, dude? I thought it would increase our FPS like crazy, like 80 frames maybe, and make it super buttery smooth and never drop from 60 FPS. But no, it's not doing that. It's getting 66 average, 61 1% low, so the 1% low is definitely improved by quite a bit with the enabling of frame generation at 4K and performance DLSS. But again, I was just expecting a much bigger bump in the averages department. Oh boy. Oh boy. Alright, I need another car, guys. Input lag-wise, yeah, I can definitely feel it's not as good with 60 FPS. But it is smooth, though. Not gonna lie. Zero stutters here. VRAM isn't maxed out, so there's nothing to worry about. It's very weird that the averages didn't scale with the 1% lows. Like, what the hell, dude? 59 FPS, 1% lows is pretty damn good. The game is looking very good still, but the averages are not that much higher than the 1% lows. That's interesting behavior right here, my friends. I've never seen this before. Let's try it on low settings here and 4K resolution, alright? With native res. It still looks pretty good, and this is the way to achieve 30 plus most of the time. I think it will still dip into the 20s every now and again, guys. We really need to lose these cops, dude. Come on. Oh, damn it. Come on, dude. Come on. Oh, there's another cop car there. No. No. Okay, I'll need to kill them, maybe. No, I can't kill them. If I kill them, the stars will increase and there will be more cops after me. This is just 2 stars, man. 2 stars give us like 1,000 cops after you. That's crazy. But yeah, now we're playing at native 4K resolution with the 4060s, and it's still playable. Yeah, we're doing a great job, guys, and it still hasn't dropped, so the 4060 is also doing a great job, but it's still low settings, and it looks way worse than what we've seen previously. Let's try, like, performance DLSS at 4K, low settings. Now we can get 60 plus the entire time, which is nice. Still applying, though, that's why it is having a few stutters here and there. At this point, there's no point, really, right? Gonna do medium, okay? Medium with balanced DLSS might be a good compromise at 4K res. Yeah, we have the motion blur enabled. It helps making things feel a little bit smoother, you know, but it lacks some detail because of it as well in some areas. 50-ish frames per second, okay? Not terrible. What if I enable frame generation? There we go. Balanced DLSS, frame generation on at 4K medium. And it is not even touching 60 yet. I mean, now it's touching 60, but it's not gonna stay above 60 all of the time, as you can see. I mean, it's so stable, though. It's 62, 63, 61. What the hell? We had here 59. Okay, there we go. It has dropped, but it's very slightly. What? So stable whenever you have frame generation enabled. It's insane, actually. Alright, that's been it for this one. Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be back with another one very soon. And as always, love you all. Bye-bye.